when we play the
And we are live on Odds Property Investors. We bring the big names and we have the big fun. Gee, something about playing a level up property, and maybe you can go to the... Anyway, no. It is going to be a huge session tonight. It's where are people investing and why are they selling? But it's going to be more than that. We're going to get... This is the maestro of property accounting in Australia. Big call, I know. And I think it's absolutely warranted. He's going to tell us at the end, are the advanced tactics such as trust, are they still working in 2025? But also... unrealized capital gains tax. Are they coming for you? I mean, it's a proposed bill, but I think it's likely something's going to happen there. But Jeremy, how are you going? What's happening, man?
I'm well, mate. It's now it's tax time, so this is where everyone should be reviewing their position and having a look at where they can alter and improve their end of financial year position, because you haven't got long. So anyone out there that's listening, if you've sold a property or you've made a decent amount of coin or that big commission check that's coming in very soon, and you've got an opportunity to utilize potentially like the 5-year carried forward superannuation concessional contribution rule, a nice long one for everyone, you definitely need to consider it, because the money needs to not only be paid, but it needs to be receipted and hit the bank account of the industry or the self-managed super fund. Then, judging by the way Labor is attacking super and attacking those extra taxes, I don't think we'll have the carried forward contribution for long. It could be maybe the last year before it's taken away, or it could be extended. So It's one of those things, if it's there for you to utilize, now's the time to probably look at doing it.
There we go. Already giving us the absolute gold. And no, this is going to be a great session. We'll talk about all that jazz. You're already giving the value. And Joe, why are you excited about this? How are you going anyway, Joe? What's happening, man?
Mate, I'm fantastic. I'm very good. I'm excited for this one because there's a lot of little things that Jeremy just says off the cuff, and you're like, yeah, wait, what? that you can get a lot of value out as an investor. So I expect people that actually listen to this and think about some of the things that we're going through, that you'll probably save tens of thousands in their property investing journey if you do the things right. Obviously, none of this is financial advice, and we can't give any specific financial advice. But it's interesting that as a property investor, all of this boring stuff, as well as not boring stuff, Jeremy. That's not the right word to use. But
making money is boring, Joe. When has making money been boring?
Well, that's it. I mean, that's what it's all about. And like, it's just like getting a discount on your loan. Like, that's a massive if you can just pick up the phone to a broker, everyone's like, oh my gosh, I want to save $20 on this tap, so I'm going to use the cheapest guy to do the plumbing. Probably a bad idea as well. But it's like, no, pick up the phone, optimize your tax, optimize your portfolio, so that you can get the best return out of it. But yeah, why are you excited about this one, Jeff?
Well, I want to hear the inside word, and Jeremy says we're the inside word for him. So I think he's more of the inside word that we don't always hear about. I want to know where are investors selling, but importantly, why are they selling as well? Are there concerns about certain markets? I'm not going to say that Adelaide or Brisbane or wherever is going to go to zero tomorrow, but it's just understanding, well, what is the sentiment out there? Because you see hundreds of people potentially sell properties per year. And it's just kind of understanding. So I think that's valuable insight for the community. So, but I'm going really well as well. Just, I suppose, not super fussed about this rain, but that's okay. It's important to have it. So for those who haven't seen Jeremy, 16 years, it's probably closer to 2 decades experience now. I think I say this every time and I need to update it. You love your small and medium sort of businesses, and you've got the channel to focus on property investment though as well. You've helped thousands of investors. You've got the 20 plus property, might be 30 by now, but worth $20+ million. I think the biggest thing that I love about you though is that you love giving back. It's the what school should have taught you, which you're absolutely exploding that channel. You're nearly catching us. You're almost at 4,000 subscribers now. So I do have a look. I remember when you hit the 1,000, I wrote a comment about 6 months ago. You've really been leveling up there. So good on you for that. And just, there's many, and you're also a proud dad as well. So, and maybe not so proud South Sydney Rabbitohs supporter, but I can talk trick on that because the doggies are going pretty well. But we'll see in a couple of weeks how it all goes.
That's it. Well, mate, thank you for the introduction. It's it's good. It's close enough. I'll leave it at that. But thank you for the plug of what school should have taught you. And I did get into the top 50 business podcasts in Australia and got to spend some time in the top 20. So it was exciting to see my name next to some really affluent people that I look up to and very knowledgeable people in the business space. So it's exciting, and it's my way of giving back. I have a lot of fun. because when you've been an accountant for as long as I have, if you don't start having fun, it becomes a very tedious job. So you've got to find the best things about it and exploit it and enjoy it. And that's what it was set up to do, just to give back and get a message to lots of people at once as opposed to one person at a time. And that's why you guys have been doing such a great job. And I still say to every time I jump on, I was the second or third person to be invited in the Oz Property Group. And that was 80,000 subscribers ago. So you guys are giving lots of gold content as well.
Yeah, thanks very much, man. I appreciate it. Let's go into the first question because there's so many things to go to. I want to know what your thoughts after yesterday, the RBA, the big sort of decision there, widely expected. And it's going to go again probably in July, potentially, depending on what happens with Trump tariffs. What are your thoughts on what the RBA is doing, and where do you see that's going to get people more excited about property, even though it's only about a 2 to 3% increase in borrowing capacity, roughly?
Yeah, so I think on average, I saw that people's borrowing capacity on average will increase by about $15,000 for that 0.25%. And on an average $600,000 to $700,000 home loan, you're going to save maybe a couple $100 a month. So it is a material change, which is good. I think it was needed. I still think underdone. They were undercooking on the way up. They should have went harder, faster. And they'll probably do the same thing on the way down. They'll go, slower, longer. So they're still trying to always have this nice balanced approach. And I really think the New Zealand Reserve Bank did such a good job. They really went up there quite quickly. Yes, it did hurt their property economy, but they squashed inflation to a point where they really almost broke the economy. And then they really now can start to create some good fiscal policy to build it back up again without inflation in the system. But I think it's underdone. I think a lot of commentary would say the same thing. We probably should have had about a 0.5% rate cut, but very openly, and people who know how economics works and people who know how currency works, it's important that Michelle Bullock's now got to tiptoe this fine line between keeping our Australian dollar strong and reducing rates to give us reprieve here in this country. Because if she does drop the dollar too quickly, you'll start to see a flee away from our Australian currency, which means our dollar actually weakens. And the thing she's trying to prevent, which is inflation, actually she'll cause it. She will cause inflation through a weaker dollar because we're a country that significantly imports a lot of our goods and products. We're going to be spending more for it because our dollar is weaker. Now, it may kickstart the exporting, it may kickstart a lot of the things that we do from a raw mineral sector, but she has to tiptoe that fine line to make sure that she keeps our Australian dollar buoyant, but at the same time, make sure she keeps our internal economy strong. Still think a 0.5% would have been much more warranted. That's what, the jobs numbers reflect. That's what the economy and GDP reflects. But I think she gets away for at least a couple of months now with the prolonged meetings between each calendar year that the RBA is having. So we'll see what happens in July, but I think most economists are predicting about 75 basis point cut this year. We're 1/3 of the way through. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, because originally it was looking even more than that. It was kind of looking at almost get down into the high 2s, but I think it might even sort of stop or bottom out, whatever way you want to say it, about that 3.1, 3.2%, which is kind of what you're saying there as well. What do you see? And we'll get. I know Joe wants to ask 100 questions about this, but what do you think about the Trump tariff kind of situation? Then we'll actually get into the topic of selling and all that jazz and where people are selling. But what do you think about that? Because I think it's a little bit not a nothing burger, but I think there's potentially huge ramifications. But I think it'll kind of just work itself way out of the system.
Yeah. Well, again, you got to Trump. What Trump's trying to do is he's trying to keep to his word, make America great again. We all know that the slogan that he's come up with, but a lot of the world's wealth has come from the borrowing of America. They significantly borrow a lot of money, create a huge amount of liquidity in the world, and every country gets to prosper on it. America borrows the money, they buy it, every country gets really rich. So his whole goal is to reset trade. His whole goal is that if I'm going to give you lots of money, I want lots of money in return. Let's balance it out. Yep. In Australia, we lost a lot of industry because of trade. We had a very strong manufacturing industry at one stage, and it went away. The government tried their best to protect it. They created some tariffs. They started to give incentives, but it just wasn't good enough. Where you look at some of the European countries, they've been protecting a lot of their industry for a long time. Hence, Europe, they don't really import a lot of Chinese manufactured cars because they're trying to protect the legacy of Porsche, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, all those great European brands that we all aspire to own one day. So that's what he's doing. He's resetting trade. He's doing it through tariffs. He's calling some people's bluff, and some people are calling his bluff. But his ultimate goal is he needs to restore the balance in their budget in America. And in Australia, we're going to have to make some tough decisions very soon because our recent budget that came out in May, in April, I should say, recent budget came out in April, showed 10 years of deficits. 10 years of deficits. And we probably haven't had a forecasted budget with 10 years of deficits for a very long time. So that is something that Australia as a taxpayer is going to have to foot the bill. Hence, we then start to go into a lot of tax legislative changes. And I think Australia is on the horizon with a lot of tax legislative changes. And the unrealised tax in super is the very start, because it's very uncommon. In Australia, we've always had a pub test that you need to meet, and you pay tax on the money you earn. Now, America has unrealized taxes on states like California, and we've all seen how well that's gone for California. People fled it, and they went to go to Florida, and they went to go to Texas. Big billionaires, big millionaires all left there because who wants to pay tax on money you haven't earned? So this superannuation tax, and we'll get into more detail about it, is the very tip of the iceberg on tax legislative changes. Because if mining doesn't really start to rebound back off a strong Chinese economy, then us taxpayers, we're going to foot the bill. And we've seen a backflip from the Labor government on the stage 3 tax cuts. Right now, we should have all been enjoying a 30% tax rate between $45,000 and $200,000. It was supposed to eliminate the middle tax bracket of 40%, and it was abolished after it was promised it wouldn't be. And that was a test again and a taste again of what's to come through tax legislative changes in the future.
How do you feel about that?
You really break it down so simply, like one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. And it's interesting because, I mean, we're seeing it in Victoria itself as well, like the land tax that's there. It's funny because, there is land tax in Queensland and regional locations, but there's also like I guess from a property purchase side of things, a regional location tax, which isn't legislated by the government or anything. It's just higher insurance rates and higher council rates. So what are the other kind of things that you foresee coming that may come through? Like, I mean, this is probably a little bit crystal ball-y, but you've got your finger on the pulse and probably had some ideas around what we could be seeing to pay off this. Someone has to pay the debt, and it's not the government. It's us.
Yeah, well, it's taxpayers. It's taxpayers. And look, the Greens didn't get the strength that they've had for a number of years. So Labor kind of gets to spend the next 3 years being able to implement the policies that they want. So I think that's a positive, not having to pander down to the independents or the smaller parties. But if Australia as an economy doesn't have a genuine way or outcome, or not even an outcome, a way forward to be able to push past deficits that they foresee in the years to come, then some of the easiest ways to get that money, yes, are unrealised taxes in super, because it doesn't hurt, very many people. Although after many years, 10, 15 years, a lot of people think their super won't grow. It will. And all of a sudden,
particularly when it's not indexed.
Yeah, you might stare down the barrel of that unrealised super tax. But what it tells me is that nothing's off the cards. Super's kind of been a very safe space, and they changed it with a $1.8 million cap indexed. And, they wanted to look at removing franking credits and the utilisation of that. And, then there was negative gearing talk being thrown around, although that would stop an economy very quickly. Now we've got an unrealised tax. One of the next things are on the cards, and we're one of the only countries that don't do it, is inheritance tax.
Yep.
We're one of the only countries that don't do it. Inheritance tax, because we have this ability to hoard wealth. One generation leaves it to the next, and all this wealth gets hoarded until it's sold. So I definitely think that could be on the cards at any time. Talk about, taxing your own home. Again, we are one of the only countries that doesn't tax your own home. Although I don't think any party or government's going to win an election on the back of, hey, we're going to tax your own home. But if you've got upper and lower house control, you can do anything you want for 3 years. So that's something that I don't think will happen. But inheritance tax is something that I do think in the horizon that we probably will stare down the barrel of looking at, because Australia now is becoming an older country. We're very young before, not a huge amount of generations lived here, but now we're starting to get really generational wealth, and it is concentrating to a very certain few.
There you go. That kind of dovetails quite nicely into why potentially and where investors are selling their properties. So I brought it back around. I didn't know it was going to go full circle, but so what are some of the reasons that investors you're seeing are selling at the moment? Is that legislation change or the fear of? Is that the reason why some people are selling, or like what are some of the other reasons why people are taking money off the table? Maybe.
Yeah, so one of the main, I always like to ask the question, what's the motivation for selling? Because I don't want to encourage anybody to sell or keep a property, and I want to make sure that you're asking yourself all the right questions. And the main things I'm hearing at the moment from people is that, look, the property's quite old. It's done extremely well. It's maybe doubled in the space of 4 to 5 years. We may have owned it for 10. Property's very old. We know it needs new gutters. It needs new roof. It needs a lot of maintenance to the building, which doesn't necessarily increase value. Now, Joe, I'm not sure on your end, but when you're, conducting your buyer's agency service, are you necessarily saying that I'm willing to pay 10 grand extra for this client to buy this property because it's got a new roof?
To say I'll pay 10 grand more for a new roof?
Yeah,
that's not bad.
It's got a new roof.
I mean, yeah, it's one of those things that you really want to get, but we will get a discount if there is a buggered roof, for sure. Like if we go up and do the pets and building and it's destroyed, or there's little holes and things like that, and you can just replace a couple of sheets, but we'll always push back and renegotiate. But when it has a redone roof, they never get much. Like it'll cost $30,000 to redo a roof, and we might, we'll buy it at market price, and then like they don't make that 20 grand or 30 grand because they got a new roof.
That's it. So that's probably been, absolutely, that's what I'm getting at. If you've got two houses side by side, both carbon copy identical, one's got a new roof and one doesn't, you're not necessarily going to pay 10, 15 grand extra for the one with a new roof. So a lot of people have, bought into these older areas, and, may need a lot of, not just cosmetic, but a lot of genuine building and foundation work, and they're just not seeing the value in doing it. And, they've made their money, and that's an opportunity for them to say, well, we'll now sell and we'll pass that project on to somebody else who may see value that we don't, or have the time that we don't have. So that's one of the main things. A lot of the clients' properties I'm seeing that they're selling are very old, very run down, and they just simply don't have the capital to be able to spend that 30, 40, 50 grand on bringing it back up to scratch, where it's not going to add necessarily more value. So to me, I look at that as sometimes a smart decision, because you're spending money, not necessarily going to get that in return. Second reason, I'm starting to see people shift in terms of a dynamic. We all spoke about years ago this mortgage cliff that was going to happen, that we can all probably say now that really didn't happen. But what has happened, and I get to see it because I'm very close and I get intimate with a lot of people's inner workings of how they take care of their finances, is that a lot of buffers have reduced. There's no doubt about it. A lot of people's buffers and cash savings that they had during COVID, because they weren't spending money, have now been diminished. Not diminished to zero, but diminished to enough to say that, hey, we don't have the capital moving forward to cover that new roof if it comes. So they're wanting to replenish a bit of their buffer. They're wanting to build up their offset account on their own home again, or maybe wanting to reduce debt. Because what higher interest rates does do is it does change the mentality. As we had a mentality that rates were low and rates were going to stay low and property was going to move at 25% per annum religiously for the next 10 years, that was very quickly changed in the history books when rates went up to, banking rates of 7 or 6.5%. And that forced people to now really look at the numbers more carefully, make sure they're managing their finances, and more importantly, that the roller coaster of roses and sunshine and rainbows doesn't always last forever. And I think that's been a really good reset for a lot of property investors, that when there's good times, you take advantage of it. And you've also got to make sure you put in a way for those tougher times to come. So starting to see savings diminish on that back end.
I mean, this is one of the things I think is an interesting conversation about the Victoria market that we're seeing a lot more people get interested in, because I think a lot of people are crunching the numbers and looking at it. If the market's done, there's some markets that we were buying, Jeff, like we were talking about on the show in Perth, and they've done 100% in 3 years. Right, they've done 100%. So we're buying them for 350,000. They're now worth 700,000. 100% return. So what is the likelihood of two markets? One market that's done 0% in the last 3 years, one market that's done 100%. What is the likelihood of the next 3 years to look like 100%? The one that's done 0 or the one that's already just done 100%? Like, which one is going to be more likely? Which one do you think has got the capacity and the steam to be able to go for that next 100%? For me, my money's on the market that hasn't done anything, as long as there's obviously pricing pressure and things like that. Yeah, not really a question in that. But what are your thoughts on that?
Jeff, is that? I think that's
no. That's a question for Jeremy, or is that me? Like, yeah, I was just about to say it kind of depends. Just because something has done something or hasn't done something doesn't mean it's going to do the opposite of something. But there is that concept of mean reversion. So, yeah, I think provided there's actually fundamentals underlying, and the challenge with that Melbourne market that may sort of still hold it back for a little bit, although there's a lot of pressure starting to happen down there, is I think the thing that people may be waiting for, and I don't know if you're hearing this as well, Jeremy, is that 2026 state election in Victoria. Because if that is that sort of what people, I don't know, Liberal feels like a rabble down that way potentially, kind of even a bigger rabble than the federal Liberal ended up being. I'm not fairly agnostic as to who I voted for, but it just didn't feel like there was a lot of impetus from. So I'm not hearing positive noises from Liberal. So I'm not confident that they're going to win that election, and then you're going to get a repealing of the land tax. And even if Liberal did win, do you think they would they even peel it back anyway? Because they're like, oh, well, it's not our fault, but they just blame Labor and still continue it. Do you think that there would ever be that repealing of the land tax in Victoria if Liberal won?
It is a struggle. It's been a very Labor-dominated state for a very long time, and look, we had seen Queensland flip for the first time in a long time to a Crisafulli government and Liberal policies, and then obviously we saw the shambles of the federal election. But look, taking a state out of it, I suppose coming back to a conversation regarding where people are selling, people have. I've said it in a podcast, and it had 60,000-70,000 views, and I had some comments of people telling me that I was crazy 6-7 months ago when I said it, and all of a sudden I had people saying, oh my God, I can't believe how right this was. Any other Nostradamus comments you can tell us? Now, it's not that people are getting out of WA because it's necessarily a bad market. It's not. It's just that people have made a substantial amount of money and caught the boom at the very start, which is fantastic, and well done to the people that bought there during 2020 and 2021, because you made a lot of money. But definitely people have seen a slowdown. That frenzy's not there. The buyers agents aren't rushing in and seeing value at WA at 700, 750, renting for $600 a week, where they're buying properties for clients at 300,000, renting for 500 a week. It's definitely not getting anywhere near the level of rental increases that it was getting in the past. I think rent's kind of caught up with where it needs to be. And, the mining sector, while still very strong, we're not in a boom that we were sending all the minerals over to China like we were, say, in the last couple of years, which led to federal government surpluses. But not to say it's a bad market. It's what people are telling me, and what I'm doing and what I'm seeing is that people are just cashing out. They've made really good money. Some of these properties are quite old. The costs attached to them are quite high, and they're pushing that money into other markets. People are starting to look at where they can generate year-on-year strong returns. And it was led by very strong returns in the past, but I always comment to people and say that property is a long game. And sometimes you have those 3 or 4 or 5 years where nothing happens. And I've owned properties where 3 or 4 or 5 years, nothing happened. In fact, things went down slightly. And then I was in the market still for that boom to occur, and that's where my money doubled. So we don't get this beautiful linear relationship of 7% increase. We'll have 3 years where the market doubles, and 5 to 8 years where the market stagnates or come down. And if you catch that, that wind with a full sail, you're laughing. And if you don't, you think you've made a terrible mistake and may sell too soon. So I think the main thing is to say off the back of that is if you are selling, you're not selling to buy, golden handcuffs and Ferraris and chandeliers. You're selling to put that money into another market where you're primed and ready to get that next leg of growth. And the beauty of it is that the data around property has never been so well constructed like it is today. When I was buying property, my first property, it was still buying properties in a window. Yes, REA had realestate.com, but it was crap. It was terrible. It used to take forever to load because internet on your phone was so slow. So the amount of data that's out there and the data that's being captured through the significant amount of transactions that are occurring has never been captured so well. So, yeah, there's a lot more educated and well-informed people out there. Buyers agents, I could count how many buyers agents on 2 hands and 2 feet 15, 16 years ago, and now there's a plethora of them. So there's a lot of messages, there's a lot of herd mentality when it comes to buying, and all it takes is 10 or 12 buyers agents in one specific area, put in hundreds of people, and all of a sudden the numbers change and it starts to create momentum, and that self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, it's interesting. I just you've alluded to some of the questions or considerations people should be asking themselves before they sell. If we could get you to rattle off those, so we could people could write them down or just think about them, because for me that's you've talked about them. So I'd love you to sort of unpack what those questions people should be asking themselves before they sell.
So I always say the first thing I think about is, if I'm selling, where am I going to put the money?
Yep.
Where am I going to get a better arbitrage? At the moment, I'm getting a return of X. I need to be selling to get a return of Y, and Y must be greater than X, because it never makes sense to sell something to put it into something else that's going down in value or losing money. So number one, that's one of the first things.
No
number
NFT.
two, no, definitely no NFTs. NTFs or NFTs? I don't even know. I can't even catch up with all these abbreviations of Bitcoin and stuff like that. But so that number one, if I got somewhere else to put it and put it in a stronger market or a stronger asset. Number two, what stage I am in my life. Am I focusing on my balance sheet, which is my accumulation and wanting to continue to grow my assets, or am I focusing on maybe looking to generate more cash flow? So that needs to make sense for you as well. Then you really need to look at the asset itself as how it can improve the value. And if the money I'm going to spend is generally going to improve it, or is it actually just going to help it sell, or is it going to do nothing at all? Because if you've got $100,000 you need to spend to underpin the property, it might be worthwhile to not spend that money, because you're not going to get anywhere near the money back. It might help you to sell it, but it may not be profitable for you as an exercise. Then the last couple considerations are there tax considerations as to why I need to sell it or what benefits I can obtain from it? So that's more important. And the last thing is I always want to assess the borrowing capacity. Do I need to sell it? Yeah. So yes, it may go through all those various different things, but do I actually need to sell it? And sometimes if you don't need to sell something, don't do it. Yeah. Just extract the equity out, use that tax-free equity then to maybe then to buy another property. For me, when I'm selling something, there's a reason behind it. It's stopping me from moving forward and doing something else. Where if the bank just continued to give me money and never stop me from borrowing, Jeff and Joe, I'd keep every single thing I've ever bought.
Yeah,
ooh, absolutely. Keep every single thing I've ever bought. But
even that horrendous Queensland property you had to renovate, because you've sold probably, I don't know, maybe how many properties in your time? Just a few, haven't you?
I've sold nearly over 20 properties in my time, yeah. And I would have kept them, absolutely. If I had endless amounts of borrowing, I 100% would have kept them, because there's no need for me to sell them. I would have kept that denominator growing and compounding. And as we all know, the 8th wonder of the world, I don't think they've announced that yet, but it is getting announced here tonight, and that's compounding return.
God. Bloody accountant.
But yeah, Luke's made a great point and very interesting. Why sell if you can remove equity out of property and invest in another asset class, saving on selling costs? And that's kind of to Jeremy's point. He said, well, if that's kind of these are the core kind of questions you should be asking yourself. Yeah.
So it's a massive, that's a great comment, because it's not just selling costs, it's paying the tax. And I had a client of mine who bought a property, killer deal, unreal, but they didn't have the capacity to do the development, so they wanted to sell it. They had the capacity to buy another investment property out there, but then they're like, okay, cool. Well, I want to sell this one because I'm not going to do the development. I'm like, well, it's in a great area. I'd probably just hold on to it because you don't need to sell it to buy another one. They're like, well, it's good to have the cash. Okay, cool. That property now has grown, $40,000 since they sold it, and they still haven't bought that next property. So if they just kept holding in a market that still got wind and still going, like, you're throwing money away by selling an asset if you're not going to put it into something else. So my kind of trigger for should I sell, the first question is, is it stopping me from going forward? So if I'm stuck and, hey, Mr. Broker, can I borrow any money? No. Have you chatted to the first tier lenders? Yep, they said no. Second tier? Nah, they said no. Third tier? Yep, they don't want me. Fourth tier? That guy down the street that has some money? Yeah, he said no as well. Okay, cool. I might have to sell one of my properties, and then that's going to open me up to then get into a better deal. But being able to refinance. Actually, this is something probably a little bit more like beginner thought, is you can take the property and instead of sell it, take the equity out of that property and then use that equity, if you have the borrowing capacity and the serviceability, to then buy another property. So you don't need to sell the property, lose, pay the tax, pay the stamp duty on the new one as well. Actually, well, you will anyway because you're buying another property. But you can take the cash out, take the equity out instead of realizing the cash gain, and use that instead, which may be larger of a number.
Yeah. I just caution that because you just need to be mindful. You're going to be paying the tax down the road. So, yeah, I mean, you may have seen something where, have you ever seen something where somebody's had to sell property and then not being able to pay the capital gains tax thing, Jeremy?
Absolutely. Yeah,
I see that all the time.
I'll give you a great, anyone who's research in a suburb called Emerald. Emerald is a genuine as mining as you can get. And I was in awe of this particular client, and they're very happy for me to share it. I won't share their name, but the story. But I was in awe. This client did so well in property, and I was a young man. And this property they bought for $300,000-400,000, and this is back in before 2010, and it was making like $65,000 a year. Then they bought it for $300,000-400,000. It went up to $1 million, and the rent went up to about $70,000. And I was like, wow, I've never seen that in my life. And they extracted all this equity out, and they used all that equity, then purchased some really good properties, no doubt about it. They used that well. But Emerald really came off the boiler, and their property actually went down by more than about 50-60%. Their rent was zero for months, if not probably close to a year. And when they were able to rent it again, it was about $15,000 per year. That person actually had to sell that property. And not only did they have a shortfall, they didn't have to pay any tax because obviously they sold it for less than what they bought it for in that particular instance. But they had a shortfall that they had to then do a bit of a loan portability onto another property. But another good example I can share is where clients have extracted equity out. They extracted up to 80 or 90%. Property may have come back 10 or 15%. So still made a capital gain, but they've extracted all the profit out during the years as equity to buy other properties. So when their loan got closed, they also had a bill of about 15, 20 or 30 or 40 grand capital gain tax, which had to come out of their pocket. But they were fine because, again, they've used that profit that the property made throughout the years as equity they extracted out. But just to come back onto one of Joe's comments, self-managed super fund is one of those really transactional entities, and it's an entity which forces you to sell. Because as we all know, in super, you can't extract equity from a property in super that has grown in value, because limited recourse borrowing arrangements restrict you from doing that. Essentially, they're wanting you to become quite vanilla and not taking too much risk. So when you're in super, to realize that gain, to realize that equity, it actually forces you to sell. And that's a strategy where now you create your capital back plus profit to then use that to go buy two. So again, I'll say with my strategy, if I can keep everything, I always would. But what I'm having to sell, I will sell. And the goal is not to replace it like for like, because that's when we lose money because of the transaction costs involved. My goal is to put that money and that profit into a far better performing asset or assets. And that's getting me where I need to be a lot quicker. So you can be strategic around how you do it. And in the end, we want a portfolio that's going to provide for our future and our future needs. which could be cash flow. And I am starting to see more sophisticated investors who have really strong incomes, not caring about cash flow, which is fine, and just working on the back of, Jeremy, I'm going to be selling my properties as a stage sale when I get to my 50s and 60s, and that's what I'm going to live off. So I'm not concerned about rental revenue or the golden goose that keeps giving income. I'm more concerned about building up capital, because that's where that denominator can really accelerate. And then I'll have a sell down approach, and that's how I'm going to fund my lifestyle.
Yeah, that's a masterclass. I want to. There's a couple of really good questions, and I think this. What if you need to sell to buy a PPOR? Well, need is a loaded term, but it's kind of, I'd say want. What if you want to sell to buy a PPOR? I mean, maybe want is, I don't know. Maybe I'm being a bit symmetrical here, but do you see a lot of people doing that, Jeremy? Which, I mean, you could justify it depending on what way you want to buy, but you've seen people do that.
Yeah, there's a tax sense and a tax reason as to why you would want and potentially need to sell investment properties to buy your PPOR, and that's if you don't have available cash to act as a deposit. Yeah. A lot of people's profit, a lot of people's cash is probably sitting in investment properties, which means that they need to refinance those investment properties to extract equity and to pay a deposit on their own home. As we all know, when you extract equity from an investment property to then use that equity to put down on your own PPOR, the interest is non-deductible. So essentially, you're borrowing 100%, 104% for your own principal place of residence, where the interest is non-deductible. So that's not a really tax-efficient way to have potentially lower debt on your investments compared to your own home, or funding debt from your investments to buy your own home under non-tax deductible environment. So that's a tax reason. I have seen people forego that tax reason and say, no, I'm happy to do it because I want to keep my properties because they're going to grow. And what they're going to grow by is going to be far outweigh the tax benefit that I'm going to lose, which is a justification for them to keep it. And I don't disagree. But for many people, it makes tax sense and cash flow sense to sell down some of your investments and use a very healthy chunk towards your PPOR to meet your budget. And it's all about your budget.
And the need to do that is like, what is the point of investing, right? Like, it's to give us a cash flow, but also let us have a principal place of residence that we want to buy. Like I'm hearing from so many, they're investors obviously, but they're not really investors. They don't really care about property investing. They're like, I just want to live in Sydney. I just want to buy a house in Sydney. And we realize that, you know, we're going to have to buy investment properties and then sell them in 15 years to actually be able to afford that PPOR in Sydney. So, you know, if it's a part of the ultimate goal, like the ultimate goal that you have is not necessarily a financial one. I mean, it always boils down to a financial number, but it might be to get that principal place of residence, to get that, you know, cash flow, or, you know, give it to the family at the end of, you know, give it to the kids at the end of everything. So a lot of reasons why someone would do that, but
and that's probably been, Joe, again, another comment that I've been hearing from lots of clients is a lot of people are moving and wanting to have now that desire of having a principal place of residence. Now, what us as investors maybe feel or don't feel, and I'll share it, is that a lot of tenants over the last 2 or 3 years have been traumatized. They've been traumatized by us as investors, no doubt about it. We were traumatized by the Reserve Bank of Australia and all the other banks associated with how the target rate or the target cash rate is. But we then passed our traumatization, if you know that's a word, but we passed our traumatization onto our tenants. And our tenants, for a space of 3 years, what did they see every time a new lease came up? A rent increase, a rent increase, a rent increase. Rent probably moved in the last 3 years faster and larger, and I'll use like the way Donald Trump says it, like no other rent increase has ever been before in the last 3 years.
Unprecedented.
It's just been crazy, and I think that's a comment I've heard quite a bit, Jeremy. I'm sick and tired of having to release the property and my rent goes up by $50, $60. Because I can rent down the road for cheaper, but the moving costs and the hassle and the headache is just too much. And that's been a motivation for people to get into the property market as an owner, as opposed to potentially a rent investor. Not everyone. It's not a hugely common conversation I'm having, but nevertheless a conversation I've had quite a bit. So, yeah, people are seeing where they've made really healthy profits. They're assessing their property's position. and looking at the age and maybe potentially the dilapidation of it, and from there, focusing on pushing that money into other avenues, either from a lifestyle perspective to buy their own home, or from a monetary perspective to increase the value and increase their wealth. And just the areas that have seen an unprecedented amount of growth the last 3 years are unfortunately, the casualties of it. Not to say they're not great markets, but when so many people make so much wealth so quickly, and we're not continuing to see the next wave of investors come in and spend a lot more than what the previous wave did, we'll start to have stagnation in the market. And that's where we're seeing a lot of these areas that have gone through big booms in the last 3 years are generally stagnating. And that's clients' conversations.
What are those? Because we did. So you have alluded to some of those markets, but what are not that we want to bag any markets. And I hope it's not markets Joe's buying in. I don't think it is. But where are you sort of seeing that people are sort of selling those? It's probably number one, Perth. Maybe it's not Perth. I don't know. Where are people selling those deals you see, whether it be for whatever reason? Is it Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, maybe, or are we Sydney?
But believe it or not, from my client base, I'm actually probably seeing more people sell in that southeast region of Queensland as a volume basis, openly as a volume basis. Yep. And that's because, again, they've owned these properties for a number of years. They're really starting to get quite old. And they're not selling because they don't think the area is terrible or not going to grow. They're just selling because it's actually becoming a money pit for them. So those lower socioeconomic areas, that's where I'm seeing a bit more movement of late. Yes, there's areas of Perth that people are cashing in on and moving into, far north Queensland. Some people moving into Northern Territory. Some people moving into Victoria. Northern Adelaide, so those places like Elizabeth Hills and Salisbury. Anyone who's brand new to investing, who saw those prices and who bought there without looking at it, had a rude shock after about 2 or 3 years. 2 shocks. Number one, they saw their values increase substantially, so that's positive. That's a good shock.
And the rents maybe.
And the rents went up, and the second shot is the tenant quality. So they've started to really feel that, oh, wow, these guys, yes, some of them are paying a rent, but they're not paying on time, or some people don't pay rent at all. So some of those areas, those lower socioeconomic areas where lower price points, they're saying, I've made my money, but I just don't want to deal with the headache anymore. I haven't seen any movements, although far north Queensland did get a huge amount of investor activity over the last 1.5 years. I haven't really started to see any selling happen there. If anything, I'm still seeing some really good buyer movements into there. Still a lot more people buying, and property professionals buying in there. And yes, Victoria's getting the property professionals, but I'd probably say I think there's more activity, and this is talking to people I know on the ground in Victoria. I know, Joe, you did a video not long ago about how you took all your staff there, but in Victoria, believe it or not, the buyer activity is not coming from investors yet. It's coming from first home buyers.
Yeah. Because they've got those incentives, you reckon, or is it just too expensive to rent, or what do you see the reason?
Just the price point. It's been a very suppressed priced market for such a long time, and seen it with my own eyes. A lot of the people lining up that are looking to go buy homes in a lot of these, home friendly, PPOR friendly areas are first home buyers. Joe, is that what you're seeing when you've gone down there? The activity is from investors or first home buyers?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was looking at. I might share my screen because I wanted to show you some of the data of like population increase and what that looks like. Is it sharing? Yes, sharing. But it's actually I need to. Yeah. So this is some Matusik.
Good old trusted Excel.
Yeah, I hate Excel. I love the Google Sheets. But you can see, essentially, it's just a big bunch of data for anyone that's listening in. It's the population from 2004 to 2023, and then 2024. So annual change from 2004 to 2024 in Victoria was 83,000 people per year. From 2023 to 2024, we have in Victoria 140,000. So we have a difference of 68% people coming in. So these numbers are across the board of how many more people are coming. But it's interesting to see some of the the biggest winners are obviously Perth, which has absolutely crushed it in the past 3 years. But the amount of people that are actually coming to Victoria, we're not seeing just invest. There's not much investor activity. It's these people that are trying to find a home. They've rented the property. They went there. The rent was fine. Rents haven't really increased. They've now they're starting to dip their toe and say, okay, well, I want to live somewhere now. How do I go about doing that? I've rented this place for a year.
I just want to point out the number one percentage increase is Wollongong, 71%. Off of an extremely low base. It was like 1,000 increase.
They've always said that the Shire is God's country, but anyone from Wollongong will tell you that it's not. But it was interesting to see that data you presented, Joe, because we saw a decline, quite a big one, in Hobart. And Hobart, probably over the last 1 or 2 years, has probably been the worst performing market, even further worse than what Victoria was showing. So again, when you're buying investment properties, it's so important to understand that it is population.
6%.
It is population that's
different.
And
no, not as population overall. No, sorry, yeah,
no,
just
but
as a percentage, yeah,
but not grown as substantially. And again, if you're not growing substantially, then you're not going to be moving in terms of price movement. So I think it's important. And again, looking at where clients are moving money around, they're all starting to shuffle their cards and looking for where's the next place people want to live. And let's face it, investors are all looking for the best deal that they can get. And if they're buying investment grade quality properties, you're not going to be getting principal place of residency prices. But if you can be in an area where people are all wanting to move in as owner occupiers, and you hold a property there as an investor, a quick cosmetic change and a quick flip, and all of a sudden you're now getting genuine owner-occupied profit margins. And for many people that are out there listening, most people, their best investment where they've made the most amount of money will always be their owner-occupied home, because they're selling that property to another person who appreciates it as an owner-occupied home.
Yeah, and this is why everyone has that, make sure you've got that owner-occupier appeal. But we might be a little bit too early to announce this. Jeff and I, for the Oz property portfolio, we've gone under contract on another property in Victoria, and
that happened today.
Yesterday. No, the Pest and Building was today, so we just haven't reviewed it. There's a couple of things, and we'll be pushing back for a negotiation and doing all that kind of stuff. But the point of saying that was 2 years and 7 months ago, this property sold for $650,000. Have a guess in the comments how much you think we bought that property for. How much has the property risen since 2 years and 7 months before, ago? This is a corner block that can be subdivided 1 into 2. It already had previous plans available on there, but they crashed, they expired. Someone's got their 670,000, so that hasn't grown very much.
I think it might be less than. I think it might be less than 650.
Less than 650. We'll probably get it for less than 650 after the negotiations, but we got it under contract for $650,000. 2 years, 7 months ago, someone bought that property, paid the stamp duties, paid the legals, maybe paid the buyer's agent, and had all of these expenses up front. They are now losing money by selling this property to us because they've had enough. Interesting, very interesting.
Very interesting. What I wanted to know, because I think this is one that everybody talks about, the 50 to 70% growth, and then you should be looking at selling, or some people, not everybody, because I don't necessarily prescribe to it. But somebody said, how many percentage growth would you need to make before even thinking of selling, given the costs are high? And of course, that's going to boil down to the individuals and what purchase price and all that jazz, Jeremy. But what do you sort of see? What do you like to see as if somebody's coming to you with 30, 40% growth? Do you just say, oh, no, you're dreaming, like you'll probably pull out 10% of that? Is there a number you sort of say to people, you should be really reconsidering this, or what do you think about that question?
Well, so the property that Joe has bought, I would have tried to, if that was my client selling it, I would have said to him, guys, look, you haven't given a property long enough and the property will be kind to you. I can say within 10 to 12 years, it will be kind to you. It will find a way itself to double. Have you got the capital to afford it, the tax benefits, all that attached to it, what's there available to us? That person's just not, again, impatient or or could be no budget. They didn't have enough capital to hold the property long term. It could be married. There's lots of different reasons as to why. But if they're selling based on, if they're selling on, I haven't made money in 2-3 years and everyone else is making 60%, I will try to fight with them and say, guys, slow down. It will be kind to you. Just give it some time. But you've always got to look at, if property doubles once every 10 to 12 years, that means that it's moving at around about 7% compounded. If I've bought into an area and it has moved 100% in 3 years, an average of 33% per year, then my gut tells me and my experience tells me is that I'm due for some form of reversion, because if I don't, and if it doesn't, this property is going to be doubling once every 3 years, which means that inflation's ripping and roaring bigger than Ben-Hur, and something's really wrong or broken with the economy. Sometimes people just time the market wrong, not because they were trying to or not trying to. Sometimes people buy too early. Sometimes people buy too late and they lose. And sometimes people just buy in 2020 like people in WA did, and the property market shot up 100% in 3 years. You know, for me, I would argue, and this is me personally, I'm not going to make any inferences or advice for other people, but if I had a property that moved 100% in 3 years, which I had in the Perth market, I bought a number of properties there. I did sell those ones. Now, I am keeping one property in Perth, and the reason why I'm keeping it is I'm doing some constructions on it later. So I'm building 10 two-bedroom apartments, and
juicy
it's a bit tough at the moment, but I'll be doing that, and that's part of my business plan for the Perth market. But the ones I did sell got me into what I believe are far superior properties. I went and purchased a beautiful residential property down in the south coast with 71% population increase down in Wollongong, and I went also to buy 2 commercial properties in the lower areas of Queensland around the Gold Coast. So for me, I saw a bit of a gap in that market in the Gold Coast, especially around commercial. Great opportunity for me to get some good cash flow and put my money, my profit that I made, into some good assets, but also still keep my residential bug that I've got and find really good quality properties here in New South Wales. So that was my decision why I sold. Went up stupid. In 3 years, I felt it was overpriced, and I get a feeling now. And the feeling is when 50 people are lining up to buy a home, that's for me the right time to sell. Because right now, if people are trying to sell property in New South Wales, and comment if you think I'm crazy in the Facebook comments, but a lot of open homes in New South Wales are not getting 50, 60 people through it. No, agents are having to work hard. They're going all right. They're ticking, but they're not having the frenzy. It's not the frenzy it once was, where every home had 50 people through it. Perth is not getting anywhere near the frenzy that it had, where 100 offers were getting done before the property went on to realestate.com. So I'm looking for feeling, not so much price. I'm looking for feeling. Are there 50 people lining up? To me, that's not a bad time to move on and buy in an area where 50 people aren't lining up. I want to buy where there's 2 people turning up, not 50.
Just trying to see. Here we go. This is the old Warren Buffett, and it doesn't necessarily apply to real estate, but crux is buy whenever it's fearful and sell whenever it's greedy. And you might miss your 20-30% growth, Jeremy. Like, it might continue to grow that, but I suppose you are repurposing those funds, and it's an opportunity cost kind of situation. Like, yes, you could leave it there and maybe make 20, 30, whatever it is percent, but you're then sort of making your life, you're seeing opportunities in different markets. So that's the way you think about it. That's not necessarily right or wrong, but I think you've got a few runs on the board, I would say, maybe 20 million plus. And we'll go to an ad after this question, and then we'll kind of talk to some advanced tax tactics. Say that 10 times fast. But Jay-Z, I love good old Jay-Z when that pops up. I get a little bit of a chuckle and start thinking about New York. But anyway, he said, will you get equity? He kind of says, should or will you get equity to fund a commercial property purchase?
Okay, I'm going to talk about arbitrage. Arbitrage is amazing. Commercial loans are 7.2, 7.3%, slightly higher than, say, residential investment loans. Yep. I love using as much equity as I can, for argument's sake, to purchase a commercial property, because the interest rate that I'm getting charged is like 6%. So, and if I could extract all the equity from my principal place of residence, where my interest rate is in the high 5s, I wouldn't even try to bother get a commercial loan, because that means I'm spending, I'm paying residential investment rates to buy a commercial property instead of buying it with commercial lending rates. So anybody out there, if you can load up some of your commercial property with residential interest rates, cheat code, I love it, yes. If you can load up your commercial property with residential interest rates, then you're going to improve the genuine net position that you'll achieve from that commercial property moving forward in the future. So some people go, oh, no, I'm going to use, only 10, 20% of my equity. No, if you've got 30 or 40%, you've got no use for that money, put it in, dump it into the commercial property and get charged a lesser interest rate, and then borrow the ridiculous commercial rates that some of these banks are charging. So,
but is that after you've paid off, like after you've offset completely your PPOR?
Yeah, if you've paid off your PPOR or you've offset your PPOR, you may do some debt recycling, taking your cash from your offset account, paying down your home loan, extracting the equity back out under tax deductible circumstances, and then using that equity, that cash out you've received from the bank, to then fund a large portion of the purchase of a commercial property. It's a great way.
You're blending the interest costs, because it's like when you got, I don't know, 50% at 6% or whatever it is, and you got the other residual amount at your 7% or whatever the commercial rate that you're getting. And if you're at 50% LVR, if you've got a large deposit, and yes, you've still got to pay interest on it, you are probably getting a better rate in commercial anyway. I don't know if LVR is as driven. I think they do drive there, because the higher LVR, there's risk in that for the commercial. Anyway, that's a really great way of thinking about it. We have had somebody talk about Perth, and it's interesting that somebody said that still feeling in Perth is still crazy. First open, sold Monday at 10 a.m. That would have sold at Saturday at 3 p.m. It wouldn't have waited till Monday. They wouldn't have 49 interested, 11 offers. So it's not, that's kind of, I'm not going to say it's not a balanced market. That's probably not, it's still a hotter market, but yeah, that would have been.
It's very much coming back to
11 offers. Jesus.
Oh,
Well, no, but you were talking. There was remember that property,
true.
Joe?
Yeah.
60 offers in Rockingham in 2023. Somehow, that was buying at like 450 in Rockingham, and they had like probably 100 people at the open home. So it's coming back to more relatively normal market.
And
I still think there's
good properties. I'll go. Good properties in any place will still attract a significant level of demand. It's just that when you've got shocking properties attracting, 49 offers or 49 people turning up at 11 offers, that's when you've got to start to say, well, what's going on in the market? And they're the ones that probably are finding it harder to move at the high level of prices. But, I can get 100 offers in my home in the space of 2 minutes. I'll price it at $10. So it's also where you're pricing the property to generate those level of offers. And in the end, it's what it sells for. But it's good to see that there is still some of that strong market there from that comment that was raised.
Yeah, I still think, based on the supply and demand, looking at that population data for just 2024 was, the second highest was Perth. Like there's still steam. I still see a lot of steam left in the Perth market. What Jeremy's talking about here is, yeah, supply is incredibly low. Demand is still very strong. I think if you bought in the Perth market at, $700,000, you're still going to make $50,000 in the next 6 months, in my opinion. There's still money to be made. Will you be making $50,000 and $100,000 the following year? Yeah, maybe not. But there's still steam left. I wouldn't be saying, oh my gosh, I need to sell down my entire Perth portfolio. Jeremy did that so that he could go into a better offer and a better deal.
He kept the great deal.
I'm still retaining one of those ones, which is part of my business plan.
That was a great buy, Jeremy. If you see one of those anywhere, just let me know. I'll get you the deposit I'll wire you the deposit now. But Townsville's still on track though, Joe, to be, I think, the top performing. That wasn't a controversial claim anyway. I think it's still at about sitting at maybe 20 to 25%. It's probably right up there. So let's throw the first ad, Joe, and then I think we've talked enough about selling. I think it's time to talk about the advanced tactics of tax. Say that.
It's going to be the fun stuff.
Everywhere you look, someone else is making money in property except for you. Your mate, he just bought a house. It's already gone up $100,000. There's some bloke on Facebook. He's bragging about pulling in a 7% rental yield. Meanwhile, you're stuck scrolling real estate and domain, confused as hell and having no idea about where to start. Or maybe you're that mate that's got $100,000 in equity. You have a few properties under your belt, but you feel stuck. You're unsure about how to scale without over leveraging and not knowing what the next right move is. So why does it feel like everyone else has some kind of secret that you're missing out on? It's because they do. There's a reason some people keep stacking properties while others sit on the sidelines stacking excuses. There's a reason why some investors buy under market value while others pay too much. There's a reason why investors know the hot spots before there's any heat. And there's a reason that some people build $150,000 in passive income while others just spend years thinking about it. And it comes down to knowledge. And that's exactly why Jeff Miles and I, Joe Tucker, created the Level Up Property course to hand you the exact step-by-step process that we've used to buy over $100 million worth of property in today's market. We've built Australia's largest property investment community with over 80,000 members, and we help everyday investors secure hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity, all without wasting years of their life trying to figure it out the hard way. Making an uneducated decision on the biggest purchase in your life is just gambling with your future.
Stop it. Get some help.
And this isn't just another how to buy property course. Let's be clear though, this course isn't free. What? And neither should it be. This is our life's work. We've spent over 100 hours each on this course alone. Oh, babe. Okay, video number 3. Number 4 with million does... Done. We've got decades of experience, millions of dollars in deals distilled into a repeatable process that you can take away for yourself. If you're looking for free advice, there's plenty of noise out there. You can go and find that if you'd like. But if you want real, actionable, step-by-step guided process that works in today's market, then this investment is going to change everything for you. By the time that you finish this course, you will have full confidence. You'll have every tool that you need to build an amazing portfolio if you act on it, right? Which is why we have mentoring built in. So we kick you up the butt to make sure that you're kicking your goals. So the real question is, how much longer are you going to watch everyone else making money in property before you jump in and start playing the property game properly? Because the sooner you start winning.
It's a good one. It's a long one. I just had time to go and make myself a cup of tea. So we are back. No, the cup of tea was pre-made. No, somebody was already made. So this is an interesting one from Christy. She says equity release of 180K of 285 for a 400K property. Would you use all the 285K and save some just in case I need it, or just in case I can buy another property eventually? So I'm assuming equity release another 285 for. I'm a bit confused by these numbers. Are you guys? Is it making sense to you, Jeremy?
I'll have a punt. Equity release of 180K, another of 285. So that's a 400,000 overall equity release. Okay. She's saying, would you buy that to buy a 400,000? Would you use all that equity to buy a $400,000 property, or leave some just in case to buy another? And it comes back, your borrowing's always, most people forget that when you extract equity out of a property, it actually reduces your borrowing capacity because you've taken some of that borrowing capacity already through the additional loan that you've taken on your property. So, Christy, to answer your question, if that's what it was, I probably, if the broker said to me, you've got this 400 grand worth of equity out, and that's all you can get out, that's your total borrowing capacity, then I would use that money to buy a property that's worth 400 grand because it's under total debt anyways. But if I had that equity and I could use more money from the bank to buy another property, and I'd leave some of that equity in another account to maybe buy another one. And if I couldn't, I would leave some of that equity as a buffer. Because what I'm seeing from people, and another reason why people are selling, and I said it very early on when we spoke this evening, people's buffers have diminished substantially. There are lots of clients that have taken it to the very edge, and they're now praying and hoping that they don't see, a big bill like a $4,000 or $5,000 retaining wall, or the tenant not paying rent for 3 or 4 weeks. It really hurts them. So I always tell people, it does, absolutely. You need to have some money left over on the sidelines. And for me, some of my buffer, believe it or not, is equity that I've extracted out of a property. I may have extracted 200 grand, and I've left that just in an account, and that is my buffer that I'll then use to facilitate and fund repairs and maintenance. So I don't feel the pinch come out of my cash flow that I have to generate from my business or from my wage. So it's always good to have a little bit on the sidelines, not a huge amount. Now, if you've got opportunity, you've got to sometimes take it with two hands, but a buffer is important, and it will get you through these periods that we've had in the last 12 to 18 months of higher interest rates.
Yeah.
But
and I think it's about having those strategic conversations with your broker as well, and sort of figuring out, okay, well, are you at the accumulation or consolidation stage? And if you're at the accumulation, then maybe you leave a little bit of cash in the tank to say, okay, great, now I can then sort of springboard into, if that property you're buying sees that growth, then you've already got, you don't need to wait as long to then sort of keep building that portfolio aggressively, depending on your risk tolerance and all that jazz. That's the way I like to think about it.
But there's a lot of people on the sidelines. Again, I get to see, number one, I manage thousands of different people. I get to see thousands of different properties that they have and purchase and hold. So I'm very lucky. There's a lot of people waiting on the sidelines. And as these rates come down, there's a lot of pent-up buying to happen. And, we could see, a second movement in the cycle. Again, it depends on job data and business data and internalized GDP. But there's a lot of pent-up buying at the moment, people who just were loaned or borrowed out of the market due to higher interest rates. And as it comes down, they'll start to enter in. So we could see a very different leg of a cycle happen a lot quicker than most of us anticipated.
Yeah,
interesting.
I like that.
It's an interesting one as well, like with that 285K. I guess it's also like just you can put it in offset as well if you're offsetting like which loan has the most amount, the biggest amount of interest rate. There's another question that's popped up here, which might be a little bit of a big one, a bit of a pie in the sky type question. I have a block of land in Newcastle, an old existing house. Tempted to pull some equity out of my 2 investment properties to build a 4-bedroom house at the back of the block. Is that risky? Ooh, at the back of the block. So that means retaining the front property. Ooh. Oh,
a block of land with an existing.
Yeah, look, if the numbers, I'll be diplomatic first, and then I'll make a comment so I don't stay on the fence. If the numbers make sense and there's no better opportunity than what you've currently got, and sometimes looking within is our best opportunities. I always say that your best staff members are the staff members that are already with you. Find a way to internally reward them and make them grow. Same as properties, but Newcastle's been this region that everybody just is waiting for it to fail for the last 15 years, and it just keeps on giving. It just has this year after year after year after year of strength, and it just continues to buck the trend, that it continues to move forward, and that people are moving there, and there's business, there's infrastructure, there's economy. And it's just one of those things that a lot of economists, investors are saying it just can't continue to move at this beautiful lateral line of increases that it has done. And it just continues to do so. I've written off Newcastle many times, and it keeps throwing egg on my face all the time and continues to have year on year after growth, where a lot of other property economies will have those periods of stagnation, and Newcastle just seems to buck that trend. So
do you lump the Central Coast into Newcastle, or you consider those kind of, because I even see that to some extent in the Central Coast, like places like Yamina and Woy Woy and those sort of areas. Maybe I wouldn't
lump them into the same category, because
demographic as well. I know that.
Yeah, I wouldn't lump in the same category, but sorry to say this, Jeff, and correct it, but anyone who looks at some of those North Central Coast areas like your Minas, your Woy Woys, your Gorikans and all that stuff actually did see a dip of probably about 10% during 2024, because again, it had a huge rush, like a massive rush of people during 2020 to 2023, COVID, people moving up there, wanting to be, near the lake and have that kind of coastal lifestyle, until they realized that Tuggerah Lake's not all it's cracked up to be, but that's a different story. But we did see a retreat there. We did see a price, and I can say that because I've got properties in that region, and I definitely saw my properties pull back, although it's now starting to rebound back and gain some momentum again. So no, I wouldn't lump Newcastle into that kettle of fish with the North Central Coast. Newcastle is its own beast, and it's a beast that continues to keep giving.
Because there's its own economic power.
Well, what about
Sorry, yeah.
What about like it's I guess the question was more around like taking equity out of the investment properties to build the single dwelling at the back of the block. So the front, Angie's followed up. Yes, because the front house is rented $600 a week, which doesn't cover the mortgage. So, well, I guess also
standard,
taking
actually, depending on when they bought it.
That, yeah, any property that you've bought over the past 3 years is probably not going to be positive. But you are going to take 200. Let's just say 200,000 out of this one, 200,000 out of this one. That's 400,000 of debt that's going to fund this. So it's going to be, these two properties are going to be even more negative by taking that money out to then go buy that purchase. So if the challenge right now is
on the new property though, you'll get that depreciation. It'll probably rent for 650, 700. So it kind of, then you just crunch your numbers.
No, but it's going to take you a year and a half, 2 years to build that. So there is that long period. Well, let's see.
Yeah. Look, if the numbers make sense, and that's the only, in the end, where we get debt from, whether it comes from the bank secured against our investment, or we drag equity out of 2 or 3 properties we've got to fund an idea or to fund a potential new property, like what I think her name was Angie, by memory, is doing. Then that's what you got to do. That's what I've done. I've extracted lots of equity out of properties where that was the only borrowing capacity I had at the time. So I just used all the equity that I had available to me, a bit on the side as a buffer, and I used that to purchase a property, because in the end it's still debt. And that equity, just so everyone's remembering, and very important, this will lead into a couple of things to make sure your tax returns are done properly. Your equity does not get claimed where it came from. It gets claimed where it went to. So if you've extracted equity from property A, B, and C to fund property D, the interest on that equity gets claimed in property D. So the purpose dictates if, number one, it's claimable, and where it went to is where the interest lands. So in this particular case, from Angie's perspective, if she's extracted equity from 2 properties, that doesn't make those 2 properties more negatively geared, because she's got to then allocate that interest to the property in Newcastle, which she's built the property at the back. She's got to make sure that rental return plus that additional interest, add back the grossed up benefits for depreciation, makes sense. And a lot of people, lots of clients have done it that way. I've done it personally that way as well. I've got the title in my hand, because to the LRS and to the bank, I own the property outright, but no, I don't. That's come from equity that I've used from a number of properties to fund that deal. It's just I didn't have any availability of lending.
Masterclass there, Jeremy. Like the amount of times that similar question gets asked in the group, I think if we could just clip that and just play that back to anybody who ever asked that question. But anyway, we promise advanced tactics, and we just gave one.
Rewind that. Go back and listen to that again. That was pretty advanced.
Well, yeah, it was. But trusts in 2025, or midway through 25, they were sort of. I'm seeing less and less. I mean, maybe I'm just not watching enough content, but. Is there less of a buzzword around trusts midway through 2025? Has the sheen worn off it, or is it still seeing the ability to grow portfolios using trusts midway through this year? What are you seeing?
Definitely there needs to be a genuine understanding and circumstance of doing a trust compared to what it was, say, 2 or 3 years ago. Again, it's a long-term entity, and you've got to look at the long-term benefits that it provides. And as interest rates come down, you'll start to see a lot more properties move from being well negative to maybe slightly negative to maybe even neutral or positive. So there is still a long-term benefit. But I think the way you use a trust now needs to be more sophisticated than what it was when people were going out and buying $1 million property, renting for $1,000 a week at 2% interest rates, where they were getting $52,000 a year in rent, paying $22,000 a year roughly in interest, $10,000 in costs. It was crazy to see that when you bought a property under 100% leverage, you made $20,000 to $30,000 profit. Just never made sense. Just blew my mind that that's what people could achieve. Obviously now with interest rates higher and have been high for longer, you need to be more strategic. You need to treat the sophisticated entity for what it is and buy sophisticated properties with a sophisticated strategy. So I talk to people about a path to being positive. I talk to people about what's your business plan for that property. And if you're buying just a stock standard 3-bedroom home that has 10 years of potential negative gearing as a forecast, then it might be worthwhile to take that bird in your hand as opposed to doing the bush and get the negative gearing benefits, because it's going to help you hold the property longer term. Yes, there is tax at the tail with capital gain tax, but it is what it is. But if you're buying strategically, looking at the right type of properties to have a good path to being positive, there's a lot of benefits that you get from a trust, not today, but in the years to come. And a lot of my portfolio is able to be continued to be built because of the properties that I purchased in trust all those years ago. A couple other things I'm hearing, and not sophisticated tax strategy, but more sophisticated lending, is that a lot of brokers are starting to do this for their clients, where some of their clients have tapped out from a lending perspective. They're able to do self-declaration letters with a specific bank, which I won't name, to say that.
Talking about that, I didn't think that was creative. I didn't think we talked about the creative lending, but
yeah, I won't talk about what bank it is, and I won't throw any. But there is some things happening where people are doing self-declaration letters to say that their trust is positive, so it's not done by an accountant, and it's able to give them an extra property that otherwise they couldn't have been able to borrow for. So there is some of that happening, and it only is available to people that may have properties in trust already and are looking to buy future properties in trust as well. So without a doubt, structure is there for sophisticated investors. It's not there for people, in my opinion, on your first or second or sometimes even third property. But if you've already got a well-established portfolio and you've got the means, which is a great business or a great job or a really good cash cow behind you to help continue to fund deals, you'll find that structure long-term is going to be one of the best things that you enter into. But it's where you are in your journey and your availability to use all the benefits around it. So has it lost its luster a bit, Jeff? Absolutely. Is it still an
much
entity?
content? That's all it tells me. I'm not on TikTok, but I imagine
it's absolutely lost its luster, and it's not there for everybody as it once was. But for the right people that are wanting to take that sophisticated approach, without a doubt, it's a great entity for the future.
Good summary.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all of the Oz property portfolio are in companies and trusts. One of the things I think that is not going to be relevant for everybody that's on the podcast, but for business owners, can you talk to, because when I learned this as a business owner, it kind of blew my mind, and I didn't think of it in a way. Why are some? No, that's not what it was. Oh wait,
damn it! I thought you were.
Maybe it is. But
I think it is.
You can own a company and you can make $500,000 worth of profit. So I can distribute that $500,000 to my personal self and pay 45% tax rate. So let's just say 500,000 is, let's just say 50% because I don't want to do the math. I have 250 grand. I'm now going to go off and buy an investment property. As a business owner, I can have $500,000, pay the company tax rate, and then use the proper. So what is it? Let's 25% or 30%.
Remaining $400,000 after the tax. Yeah,
$400,000 into an investment property. Yes. Can you just explain that? Explain that to the audience in a simpler way.
There's a couple. So this is business owners. No one likes to pay stupid amounts of tax at individual marginal tax rates, and hence the reason why I always encourage my business clients to pay themselves a wage of 135 plus super if they've got the means to live off that money, because once you start to pay yourself more than that, your tax rate goes up to about the 40% tax bracket, including or plus Medicare levy. So what we encourage clients to do is retain your profits. Now, obviously, if you're in a business with very high risk, there's some caveats of that, but a normal business, normal risks, things just kind of tick on year. We like to quarantine our business profits at a 25% tax rate, meaning we've got more money now for the business to continue to reinvest in more business activities. But what you can do with that retained earnings, that cash, is you can do a deed of loan where you do under a proper loan, genuine proper loan, equivalent to what you would normally get at a bank, arm's length distant rates, arm's length distant repayment terms. So essentially now your business is not only providing services, but it's also turned into a little bank, and you can now lend that money to another entity that you own. And it has to be paid with interest. One gets to claim it. One has to show it as an income. Exactly the same way CBA works. Just without billions and billions of dollars worth of cash, you may have your 400 grand. That's one way to do it. And that's what I see a lot of people do. Another way, and it's common as well, is that they'll set up another company and buy a property in the company, because company to company, there is no Division 7A loan. It's a very technical way to say you're taking money out and you need to repay that money back with interest, which is non-deductible to you and accessible to the company. But a business-to-business loan, you own the company and your other company is handing the money over. You now go buy a property in that company. What you are losing is the 50% discount. So you will be paying tax at potentially non-passive or at passive income tax rates, which is 30%. So that's number one. But number two, you're having more capital after tax to be able to buy better quality property. So that's why some people will do it. You just got to be mindful that when you're doing company to company and buying properties in company, that's not your money, that's the company's money when it makes a profit. And the way you get the money out of that company is through dividends, which will have potentially tax at the tail, otherwise known as top-up tax, because you'll get the franking credit, which is tax the company's already paid as a credit to you. So that's a win. 30% tax has already been paid. And then that top-up difference is, when you start to move into various different marginal tax brackets. So without a doubt, there are more incentives to grow your wealth utilizing structure when you are a business owner. No doubt about it.
And
I always counteract that and say that running a business is hard and it's very expensive and it's not as fruitful as everyone thinks.
Pay GST, payroll. I mean, I don't pay payroll yet.
There's a lot. There's a lot of taxes. So it's a little bit of a win that business owners get compared to someone who's on a PYG salary, paying exorbitant amounts of tax at higher rates. If you're a business owner, there's a lot more things available to you.
The way I look about that is you get the opportunity to use those funds to invest and delay or delay some of the tax that you would have paid. The deferring, delay, defer, kind of same.
And that's the best comment, Jeff. You've actually hit the nail on the head. You're deferring the tax, which we all know that money has a lot of value when you use it the right way. So if I can defer that tax for as long as I can and use that to make more money and build more wealth, then I'm happy to pay a huge sum at the end, because I've got more than I would have got anyways if I was to pay the right taxes at the start based on taking lots of money out at a marginal tax rate that's high.
There you go.
Yeah. I just think it's just so much power that business owners don't even know that exist. I've spoken to these people. I've spoken to people about this so many times, and I always say, make sure you speak to Jeremy or speak to your accountant. But gold medal star.
That's the
medal. You can essentially, instead of having $200,000, you can have $400,000 and put that into a property, which is going to be a better asset, which is going to then be leveraged. So actually it's $400,000 to then get you into $1 million property instead of $200,000 to get you into $500,000, $600,000 property. And that's going to compound in 10 years time. It's going to be a massive difference.
Compound. Let's just, I'm going to be the party.
The Oz property portfolio is built on this. There's no way that the Oz property portfolio would be as big as it is now without this simple little strategy that Jeremy's worked out.
With great power comes great responsibility, though, I would say. Just make sure,
Yes. Make sure they're good buys.
Just
make sure they're cracking deals.
We're gonna wrap up pretty soon. So throw your questions in. Otherwise, we could literally be here. We're already at nearly an hour and a half, and I'm just mindful of Jeremy's time. But Gurav loves to ask a share question, and because you see a lot of people who buy various, I imagine you buy all sorts of assets. He's asked, are you seeing a shift towards alternative assets, shares or ETFs? We know that gold is at all-time highs. I think gold's done 50-60%. Are you sort of starting to see? I mean, I don't really like gold, but it's done okay.
Yeah, I personally haven't, because a lot of my clients use property as their tool of wealth, and I'm the accountant they'll come to assist. So I've got clients that touch upon that stuff, but I do remember reading an article not long ago that either a high court judge or a judge in some very specific court in Australia but made a notion, and I think the ATO's got to fight it, that apparently Bitcoin should not be treated the same way as shares and have capital gain tax.
And so there's an income. Is it an income tax then, or like?
I've got to read it more, but I did read it that this judge is saying that it should be treated as a currency, and there's no tax on currency or capital gain tax on currency in that fashion. And the ATO has now got to try to find a way to make sure that they shut that down very quickly, because the ATO stance on cryptocurrency is that if you use it to purchase services or products, less than 10. I think if you use it for products or services less than 10 grand, it's subject to no tax because it's been used as a currency. And the ATO made a comment saying that they estimate between $500 million to $1 billion worth of taxes being paid on the back of cryptocurrency capital gain tax. So Be interesting to see what that happens, because if it is deemed as a tax-free asset, forget about cryptocurrency.
Oh
Will
man,
go through the
people will go
roof.
mental.
They will go crazy for it. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens in that. Again, just take it on face value. Don't listen to what I'm saying and go rush into it. It's just an article that I read about what was going on with some judge. A high court judge made a ruling. Tax office are a big nasty beast. They very rarely lose, and when they do lose, they still win because they'll find a way to keep it in courts and keep it going.
I got sent that article in some of the groups. I mean, I'm like, I don't think this is a good thing. I mean, it might be, but yeah, I saw that thing too. People are saying we're not letting Jeremy go, not letting him go. Well, he does have a thing.
I'll leave people with a couple other things for tax side of things. So, number one, make sure that any costs that you need to be spending prior to 30 June 2025, you do it. So if you've got, a couple of those little minor repairs and maintenance, or there's a couple of bills like insurance is one of the big things. If you've got an insurance bill before 30 June and it's due 6th of July, pay the damn thing before 30 June. If you've got some expenses like council rates, a quarterly notice that you've received, which is due 6th of July, pay the damn thing in 30 June. That way will ensure that you get your money back as a refund earlier than having to wait till the next financial year. So timing of expenses is important. The ATO are hunting down and now getting sent all the data from the banks. So anyone who's got a mortgage, a loan, you are now getting your loan details, loan interest getting sent to the ATO, and the ATO are data matching from that. So if you've used your equity to go buy a car or a boat, you will get found out because they're looking at your starting and ending loan balances. They're looking at the way you're obtaining the loans, and they're data matching that against their systems. So make sure that if you've used equity from property A to purchase property B, ensure that you're claiming that interest on that equity in property B, because that is where the purpose of the loan was for. That was the purpose of the loan. Making sure you're claiming all of your interest accordingly. One of the big things, and it's happening quite a bit as a lot of people are refinancing, if you have paid LMI with CBA, for argument's sake, when you first bought the property, and normally lender's mortgage insurance is a borrowing cost claimed over 5 years, and you may have refinanced that loan with NAB 2 years later. The remaining balance of the lender's mortgage insurance left over when you paid it with CBA can be claimed up front. So if you paid $5,000 with CBA and only claimed $2,000 so far, you've got $3,000 remaining, and you've now went and spent more LMI with NAB on a refinance. That remaining $3,000 LMI with CBA can be claimed up front, and the new LMI with NAB is now claimed over 5 years. So that is something you need to make sure you're advising your accountants of. If you have had a refinance during the year, ensure any remaining balance of your borrowing costs are claimed up front. Depreciation schedules, make sure you get them. You've got the costs that you can claim on the depreciation schedule. If you pay it before 30 June, that's going to help with tax, and it'll make sure that'll maximize your refund. Scrapping reports, again, if you've had any items that you've had to scrap, it could have been an air conditioner that you purchased 3 years ago and it's now been thrown away because the damn thing broke down and warranty didn't fix it and you have to go spend money on a new one. Make sure you claim the closing written down value, which is the amount of depreciation on that air conditioner that you haven't claimed thus far. So that's called a scrapping depreciation. So there are a couple little things that you can do to improve your situation. Couple other things, you've got PYG variations that you may need to do moving forward on 1st of July. So if you're needing a little bit of help from a cash flow perspective, rather than waiting till the end of the year to get a big refund, speak to your accountant, get your PYG variation in on the 1st of July, estimate what potentially your refund will be, and that's going to help you improve your cash flow to hold your properties. You don't have to wait to the end of the financial year to get your big refund. In fact, smart people, and what a lot of smart people are doing, is they're getting their PYG variations in early if they know they're going to get very large refunds, and they're now getting the benefit of utilizing that money from tax earlier to maybe go in their offset accounts or to help them hold their portfolio longer, or to even save and be that little bit of extra cash that they then use to buy their next property. So there are a couple little things that you guys can do now to get some immediate wins and benefits. There's a plethora of other things. Don't be dodgy. Tax office are going to be hunting you. Their systems have been upgraded like you wouldn't believe. The amount of money they're pumping into catching and auditing people is huge. I've had a couple of reviews from my clients where they're doing data matching reviews. We keep all the substantiation and we've been able to pass that with flying colours. But from what I am seeing, they are going as deep down as to say, well, who actually owns the property? Is it really 50-50 or did you do 95-5? So just make sure you are getting really a good understanding of your own portfolio so you can pass that information over. Last thing, if you have sold a property in the 2025 financial year, I said at the start, I'll repeat it again, you've only got a very small window to utilize your carried forward concessional contributions, which is your 5-year rule in super, to get that money in your super to obtain a substantial tax benefit. So if you're wanting to save tax and wanting to utilize super to do it, you need to do it now. It needs to hit the super fund bank account before 30 June, or else it won't be utilized or be able to be claimed as a deduction. So there's some little things you can do to really improve your position and get a far better return and make a little bit of extra money.
Boy, okay. Rewind that and pause, listen to the one and then soak that in and then pause and then listen to the next one and then listen to the next one. There's a great comment that's come up here that I'm sure is on a lot of people's mind. Is it worth obtaining a depreciation schedule on an older property, say 20 years old? Is it worth it when you have to take is it worth it when you have to take it off the purchase price? So should I get a depreciation schedule on an older property?
Yep. So number one, there's two tones to questions. It's one about the depreciation add back when you sell it. But Christy, if definitely run it through with a quantity surveyor, they'll tell you if it's worth it or not. I've seen some older properties that have been built in the 1960s with lots of depreciation in it. Why? Because there's been substantial major capital works and renovations being done to the property well after 1986. So that's something there that has been able to give some benefits. Is it worth it when you've got to take it off with the purchase price when it's sold? Is absolutely yes, because you get a tax deduction at your marginal rate on the capital works when you claim it. And then when you sell it, you're only having to pay back half of what you've claimed. So if you've had 10 grand worth of building write-off claimed, and that's got you 4 grand worth of refund, when you sell the property, you've got to add back that 10 grand. We then get a 50% discount, meaning you've got to pay back $2,000 of your 4 grand refund. So just to put that in perspective, you've got a 4 grand refund from your depreciation building write-off. When you sell it, you'll have to pay back 2 grand of that. $2,000, money for jam for me. I'll take it every day of the week. That's free money. Thank you, ATO, because you don't give us much else.
and
that's
a lot of companies will actually give you they'll if they're not confident that they'll get it, they'll give you a guarantee that they won't do the report, because they've got a pretty good idea how much depreciation based on the way you answer the questions. Obviously, if you don't answer the questions in a way then that may not be the case. But in most companies offer that if they're not going to save you more than a fee, they won't charge you. I think that's so pretty standard these days from what I've seen.
There's a great question that's come up here, a bit of a different one. Is it a good idea to buy a property in a company, then open a new company and issue shares to myself in order to claim the loan interest against my personal income for the purpose of tax efficiency?
I'd love to speak to the person who asked that question because it's very high level. People do this with inside a unit trust. What you do need to understand is that when you buy a lot of shares and borrow to buy those shares, it is a financial instrument, because a company is limited by shares or could be unlimited depending on what it is. There are some significant tax benefits to this question that this person's asking. So they've got a really good idea, and I know they've spoken with someone who has a good idea about it. For most people, the answer is no. For most people, the answer is no, because they want to maintain a current account or director's loan account, which means they get their capital back tax-free. But when you're having to buy shares in your own company, otherwise known as issued capital, that money's locked in, and then you need to do share consolidations and restructuring to get your money back out. So it's a good question. Not for here. You need to get all the pros and cons around it, but it is plausible, meaning you can claim interest in your own name as a tax deduction for the purchase of those shares, similar to a margin loan when you go buy Commonwealth Bank shares. You can go take a loan to go buy Commonwealth Bank shares, and the interest is tax deductible against the Commonwealth Bank dividends. Same concept applies to your own company, limited by shares, but you've got to be very careful, because then you've got share restructuring and dilutions, and you've got to take shares off the table through restructuring. It's a plethora of different things, and accountants make a lot of money from it. So, talk to your accountant. It's a good question.
Keen
make
to
a lot of
explore
money.
this with you.
When people do all those things, then it becomes a lot trickier outside the box. Yes, we can do it, and we charge lots of fees for it.
Yeah, guys, it's been an amazing session. We haven't even really talked too much about the unrealized capital gains tax, but that's okay. We did cover it a little bit, and but I wanted to say for anybody, there's over 100 people still watching this stream. It's actually increased, continued to increase. So people would watch this for probably 2.5, 3 hours. But I wanted to say, if you've loved understanding selling a property and where people are selling it and why and all that sort of jazz, jump on Spotify. We want to get into the top 20 like Jeremy. Get us. You can be number one. We'll be number two, Jeremy. I'd love if people gave us that 5-star because it helps us get maybe even people like Louis. I was going to say Louis Christopher. Maybe he might not be coming on. But give us that. And Joe, I want to give you the opportunity to finish it off. How do we finish off, Joe?
Actually, one thing I did want to say is I was scrolling through Reddit. If anyone's been on, I'm not really a Redditor, but I was looking at this. I was looking at debt recycling, and I went through it. And there's they vote, they upvote things, and you can say, "Oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever." And then there was an article that was upvoted the most and said, "Oh my gosh, this is the absolute best video that simply breaks down debt recycling but also explains the concept as a whole. Everyone must read this, watch this." And then I was like, "Oh, this will be interesting. I wonder what." Click into it. It's bloody Jeremy's school of what school should have taught you. So it's actually worthwhile listening to. So that is one thing that I wanted to say. Go on to YouTube.
Very long-winded. I was like, where is he going with this? But go on, sorry.
Where is he going with this? Yeah, I'll post it in the group in the comments here. I think that'll only go to YouTube. I'll pop it in the Facebook ones as well. But that actual video is incredible. I had to I'm like, oh, I'll watch it at night time, and I'm like, oh, cool. Halfway through it, I'm like, cool. I need to pause this and properly watch it. So hats off to you for explaining something. We've had many people explaining it, so complex, so convoluted, and you're just like, blah, 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 done. Oh, that's good. So thank you for that, mate. So yeah, anyone that needs to be a part of that, check that out. But I don't know what I've got nothing else to say, mate. That was an unreal session. A tax is one of those things that's boring, but you make it interesting. You make it connected to people. So thank you very much for that. Where can people learn more about Jeremy, get more Jeremy in their life?
That's what you need to say.
You can reach us at www.pradiumpartners.com.au. And you're more than welcome to listen to all my What School Should Have Taught You. It's my way of having a lot of fun and getting a message out to a lot of people. It's similar to what Jeff and Joe have been doing now, I could pretty much say, for almost the last 4 to 5 years. And yeah, don't think I'll ever be as big as the Oz Prop Group, but I love tuning in every Wednesday, and you guys do a brilliant thing for a lot of property investors out there. There's a lot of gold nuggets. There was a comment that you guys raised that, what has Oz Property Group done for you? And one of the biggest things that Oz Property Group has done for me is open my eyes to hundreds of suburbs that I've never heard of in my life. And again, I deal with thousands of people, thousands of properties every year, and there were suburbs I've never heard of in my life. And I actually researched those suburbs and bought in those suburbs and made lots of money from your members in this group, the collaborative approach that you have. And it's hard work. Anyone listening, Jeff and Joe do a huge amount of work moderating this group. I've been in a couple of property groups in my lifetime, and it's a shocker. It's filled with crap and people spamming it and people trying to sell services that don't even exist in this country. So well done to you guys for the huge effort that you put in to moderate this whole group, bringing on some of the best talent, the best people in this country, and for creating an environment where people feel comfortable enough to share what they're doing. Because if you follow a lot of these people in this group, some of them are fantastic. I know them firsthand, and they're doing some amazing things. And all you need to do is just emulate what they're doing at a smaller, or if you can, larger scale, and you'll make a truckload of money. And don't forget to visit Joe and Jeff on their Level Up property course, because I've seen it. I've got to witness them creating it, and it is fantastic. It's one of the best property courses that are out there.
Well, no better way to end the session on that. Thank you very much, Jeremy, for taking the time, energy, and effort for this one. Let's go buy a property, guys. See you later, and claim our
For your
deductions.
support, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.